Hello fellow Clashers, I am KairosTime and it is time to clash. Today we're going to be taking a look at the ladder tier list for the Legendary Arena and up, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so before we get started, I did want to briefly mention that this video is brought to you by Clash Royale. These tier lists are not just based off of my experience or just a whim. In fact, I took a look at the usage rates and the win rates of all of the cards in the Legendary Arena from statsroyale.com. I take all of those numbers, put them onto a giant spreadsheet, and then I have a huge discussion with some of my most competitive players in my Kairos Kingdom Discord. If you're interested in joining in the discussion, there's a link in the description below, and I'll try and drop a link in the comment section below as well. So just wanted to go over some quick rules and reminders. This is for the Legendary Arena. If you disagree with some of this and you're in a lower arena, just move along. This is specifically catered to the Legendary Arena, but it will have some application for lower arenas as well, particularly Arena 10 where all the cards are available. I also took a look at rarity and level dependency. For example, the Executioner is an epic. It's difficult to level it up, but it's not really dependent on its level to be successful, and so it actually ranks pretty well. But if you take a look at comparing Poison and Fireball, well, Fireball is easier to level up, and so it does more damage than Poison, and so Fireball just ranks higher. You guys kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about here. Then also, win rates and use rates are in the description. I'm going to link all of the win rates and use rates to a Reddit post so you can take a look at them all. We're going to start out with the F tier. So old cards in the F tier, we got Sparky, we got Giant Skeleton, the Prince, the Cannon card. All of these are just not good cards to use. Now then we also have Clone, Rage, and Mirror. Now I know some people are going to be like, what? I love playing with those cards. In fact, I did play somebody with a level 7 Mirror who mirrored the Cannon card, so it was level 8, and they did pretty well, but it's not going to work consistently. You guys get what I'm saying. Tesla Tower in desperate need of a buff, if you ask me. It's ranked F in all of my tier lists, and it's just not good. Spear Goblins also don't do too well. But new to the A tier is the Heal Spell. The Heal Spell had an atrocious use rate and a really bad win rate. It's just not good for the ladder right now, and the only card that it really does well with is Three Musketeers, but even then it's difficult to level up your heal to be competitive with the Three Musketeers, and so it just really struggled this last time, and so I think it definitely fits into the F tier since its nerf does not even deserve to be in the C tier. These cards are fair, they can be used, and some of them actually pretty decently if you build up the right deck around it, but they tend to be outshined by other cards that do a little bit better job at filling specific situations. So we've got the Lumberjack, the Dark Prince, which guards frees Three Musketeers because they really struggle against Fireball. The Wizard, I was actually tempted to bring the Wizard up into the B tier because it had a surprising use rate and a surprising win rate, but I think it might have been a little bit more of a fluke. The Wizard just gets destroyed by Fireball, so I'm not convinced that it's ready to go up to B tier yet. Then we have the Furnace, Dark Goblin, and the Bomber. New to the A tier, we have the Graveyard. The Graveyard is going from the B tier down to the C tier. Since its nerf, it just has really struggled and had really poor win rates and use rates, and so I'm going to be moving it down to the C tier. Then we got the Night Witch. Same story with the Night Witch, almost non-existent in the ladder, honestly, because it just struggles to deal the damage that it typically you'd want it to, and it's just not good since it got nerfed. Then we also have the Battle Ram. The Battle Ram is an interesting one. It had low use rates and low win rates, and since its nerf, it just has struggled to deal the consistent damage that you need it to, and it never was that great on the ladder. I mean, it was a decent card when it was pretty strong in the ladder, but it was never strong enough to like overtake Hog Riders or anything like that. And so the Battle Ram is really now struggling as well. Then we have the Cannon. The Cannon is really struggling, even with an increased usage in Hog Riders. The Cannon just doesn't provide the value that I wish that it did. There are better cards that do a good job at defending, but then also go on the offense, and that just makes the Cannon card get outshined. Then we also have the Skeletons. The Skeletons are a C tier card. They're great for cycling, but nobody starts with the Skeletons in the deck. Well, somebody probably does. But a good player will start, if they want a cycle deck, they'll start with the Ice Spirit, and then if they want it to be even more cycle-y, then they will put in the skeletons as well. The skeletons are an afterthought, and typically don't provide a lot of value, so they just get cleared pretty easily, and they just don't. I wish that there was an easy way to buff them between 3 skeletons and 4 skeletons, but there's not, and so, well, not that I can think of. I'll let Supercell do with that. Okay, now there were so many B tier tier cards that I ended up having to use 2 slides. So B tier are the cards that are good. They can be used in decks, and especially if you build a deck around them, they can do really, really well. And now you'll notice the Royal Giant and Elite Barbarians, they're old to the B tier. They do good when they're over leveled, and when they're under leveled, they do poorly. But when they're really over leveled, they do really, really well. So they kind of are a weird tier. They're like an awkward tier. I don't know what to call it. The over level tier. I don't know. Whatever. But then also I have the P.E.K.K.A. Now the P.E.K.K.A. I would consider bringing up to the A tier, but it's just difficult to level up the P.E.K.K.A. to the point where it's competitive, and it's really easy to deal with a P.E.K.K.A. that doesn't have the health when it's under leveled. And so the P.E.K.K.A.'s not quite there yet. Same with the Lava Hound and the Balloon. The Balloon itself may be possible to go up to the A tier, but I'm not actually convinced yet. I would like to see Balloon more before moving it up. Then we also have the Princess, the Ice Wizard, and then the Bandit, which just because they're level, they're the rarity, they're legendaries, they're difficult to level up. I don't feel like they're ready to go up quite yet. We have the Bowler, Skeleton Army, Valkyrie, Ice Golem, Minion Horde, and also the Fire Spirits. Usable cards, but you kind of have to build a deck around it. They have to fit a specific purpose in your deck. New to the B tier, we have the Golem. Now, the Golem is actually moving down from the A tier because it just struggles against fast-paced decks, and we're seeing a lot of fast-paced control decks, and that really does put beatdown cards like the Golem into a difficult situation. We also have the Expo and the Mortar. They had, even though they did get a buff, and people played with them, and they were pretty good for a little bit, they're not quite good enough for the A tier yet for the majority of players. They actually had a really low win rate. Even though they did get a buff, and they're the Expo specifically. Now, Mortar can be good, especially if you have it over leveled. There's a really great Cycle Mortar with a Rocket deck out there, and that's a really fantastic deck, but not quite good enough for A tier in my opinion. Then we also have the Miner. The Miner struggles to get damage off of the tower when it's under leveled, and it's difficult to level him up to a competitive play. Now, Miner's one of the best cards in tournaments right now. If you can level him up to be competitive, then he's an excellent choice, but there are other options that will, he's just not quite good enough for A tier yet. You can obviously have a good deck with him though. Then we also have the Elixir Collector. The Elixir Collector saw a huge decrease in win rate since the last ladder tier list, and the reason why is just there's so many easy ways to get rid of it. People are getting very familiar with how to punish playing down an Elixir, an investment like the Elixir Collector, and then also they're able to clear it. There's a lot of rockets in the ladder right now, and there's a lot of lightning as well, and the Elixir Collector just seems to be struggling. Then we also have the Inferno Tower and the Tombstone. Now, the Inferno Tower and Tombstone can be good in specific decks that you need them to fit a specific role, but they don't go back onto a counter push, and because we're not seeing golems as much, then Inferno Towers don't seem to play a good role in a lot of decks. The reason why you might want Tombstone is for Hog Riders, but the Hog Riders, the decks that Hog Riders are playing right now are very much counter push decks. And so if you're playing a Tombstone where you're just defending, it's actually going to be very difficult because you're always going to be defending rather than being able to go on the counter push and force them to defend a little bit. You want to be able to play a little bit on their side of the field, so Tombstone also really struggles. The Inferno Dragon is going up from the C tier up to the B tier because the Inferno Dragon does have that ability to go from the defense onto the offense. And the Inferno Dragon, even though it's a legendary card, does have the, it's very level independent. It's not going to get fireballed in one shot. The one difference with it is the chance of it getting lightninged in one shot. But even then, that's a pretty specific situation. So Inferno Dragon is going up. Then we also have the Poison poison and the arrows. I mentioned poison earlier, it just is outshined by the fireball. The arrows actually has a pretty high usage rate and a pretty decent win rate this time, but I think that the arrows are going to be less useful as bats come into the meta a little bit more. I've been playing bats in the Legendary Arena, and there's a lot of times where somebody has arrows and they'll actually just arrow my bats for a negative trade when it wouldn't be a great option for them because it was the only option that they had. So I think the arrows might be I think that we're going to move them down for right now. We also have the Mini P.E.K.K.A. I thought the Mini P.E.K.K.A. was going to be a great stalwart defense, but the Mini P.E.K.K.A. is really, he has a very fast speed, and because of that, it's actually really hard to do a counter push with a Mini P.E.K.K.A., especially when your opponent is playing like a really short elixir match. So like if your opponent is playing Hog Riders really quickly, then it's going to be difficult for you to defend, and Hog Riders are still going to be able to get shots off there. Now there is one really great reason to have the Mini P.E.K.K.A., and that is if you find that your opponents are playing the Electro Wizard. The Mini P.E.K.K.A. does one shot the Electro Wizard on equal levels, and it's likely that you'll have a Mini P.E.K.K.A. leveled higher. So Mini P.E.K.K.A. I think is a good option, but I don't think that it's the very good option that I thought the Mini P.E.K.K.A. was going to be when I did the first version of the tier list. Next we have the Mega Minion, and the Mega Minion is going down because of the bats. The Mega Minion is a good option in specific decks, but the bats counter the Mega Minion all the time. They just 5 bats right surrounding it. I mean, they'll take out the Mega Minion for 1 elixir less and cause some troubles with it. Then we also have the Musketeer, gets fireballed in 1 shot very easily, doesn't seem to have the use rate or the win rates that it did the last time I created the tier list. And then we also have the Barbarians. Now I had originally put the Barbarians into the A tier because they did such a great job at defending really big pushes, especially when over leveled, but the win rates and the use rates would suggest that the Barbarians just are not that great after all. They're difficult to turn into a good off counter push, with an exception of some Barbarian Royal Giant decks where you have those commons over leveled, but like I said, you have to have them over leveled, and otherwise they're just not that they're not worthy of the A tier position. Now let's go ahead and move on to the A tier, the very good category. These cards are cards that are very good in the meta. They don't necessarily define, you don't have to count on these cards being in every single deck like some of the S tier cards, but they're definitely good. We've got the Giant and we've got the Hog Rider. The Hog Rider had an insanely high usage rate. In fact, over 1 in 4 decks in the Legendary Arena are Hog Rider decks, so you should count on being able to play against that Hog Rider. You'll also see a lot of Giants as well kind of popping up here as Golem decks are becoming a little bit less popular. Giant seems to be the preferred beatdown deck type. Then we also have the Executioner, the Baby Dragon, the Tornado. All 3 of those are really great defenses. And then we also have the Goblins that are also very good options. New to the A tier, we have the Electro Wizard. Now I originally put the Electro Wizard in the B tier because he does get 1 shot by fireballs pretty frequently, because fireballs are over leveled or do a good job at taking care of that. But I've seen that the Electro Wizard is being used pretty frequently in the Legendary Arena, despite him being 1 shot by fireballs that are leveled higher than he is. The Electro Wizard is continuing to get a lot of defensive value and offensive value, and seems to be a very good option in the current meta, despite what I had originally thought. That's right, guys, I can change my mind. I can listen to you guys. I can look at the stats and put out what is the best, because I want to make this tier list the best. Now, the Electro Wizard, so very, very good option to be using right now, even if you are facing a lot of fireballs. Now, then we also do have the Lightning. The Lightning seems to be doing pretty well. It's going up to the B tier. Then we also have the Archers that are moving down from the S tier. And the reason why the Archers are moving down from the S tier is they're not being used as much. They don't seem to defend a lot of the similar pushes they do that they have in the past. But the Archers, they're a very good option. They're just not quite. They are common, so they can be leveled up pretty competitively, but they don't, even when they're over leveled, they don't seem to provide the value that I would like them to be in the S tier category. Very good option though. Then we also have the Goblin Gang. With the use of the bats, or the zap, and the log in basically every single deck, the Goblin Gang just is not getting the value that it used to. In fact, you're almost all better going with the Goblins in a lot of different situations. The Goblin Gang definitely was an S tier card at one point because it was a common, very easy to over level, and basically everybody was running it. It was such a great deck or card to use, but doesn't quite seem to be at that point anymore. There are other options to use, bats, goblins, for example, that are equally as good. Then we also have the minions, kind of a similar story. Commons, good to very good options, but not quite S tier category. Then we have the bats, going from the C tier up into the A tier. The previous tier list that I did, the bats didn't receive their buff yet, and I've seen that the bats are just a great option to use. I love using the bats because a lot of times you can count on your opponent having the log instead of zap, and that means that you can count them off guard. You can catch them off guard without that, excuse me. The bats, very good option. In fact, if you have the opportunity to level them up, maybe over level them a little bit, then the bats are really great options as well. Let's finally talk about the S tier, the best of the best. These cards are cards that you can count in being almost every deck. They do define the meta. You have to be conscientious of them being in cards when you're playing, when you're building decks for the ladder. First of all, we have these spells, the Fireball, the Log, and the Zap. All three of these cards, you're almost never going to find a deck without one of these cards. Almost always you will find it, you'll play against somebody that has one of these three cards, and most of the time you're going to be playing against somebody that has two of them, and sometimes even three of these cards. They're just so good at providing a lot of value, very versatile and easy to level up, with the exception of the Log, but the Log you don't need to be over leveled to be pretty successful. Then we also have the Knight, probably one of the most stalwart defenses in the game. For being a common, you can level him up even maxed out pretty easily, and he's just an excellent card to be having. It stops a lot of great pushes, a lot of fast things, and it also does a decent job of defending against Hog Riders if you're okay with sacrificing some tower health. Then we also have the Ice Spirit, the best at cycling. The Ice Spirit provides so much value, and it's a great, especially if you need just a versatile response card for if your opponent. It does have a quick rush. It does a great job at even just slowing down beatdown cards like the Royal Giant or Giant from taking out some more damage onto your tower. Ice Spirit's just a fantastic card. Here are some of the collaborators that helped me out with this tier list. Make sure that if you are interested in joining in the discussion that you join the link in the description below for our Discord server, and comment, subscribe, let me know what you thought about it. I am sorry that it took me so long to get back to doing these tier lists. This last month has just been absolutely crazy. I'm so excited to be back with it. Hopefully I can get one out every single week. So, you guys are fantastic. This is KairosTime ticking by, and we will see you in the arena.